Okay, everybody, welcome back to part 2 of the Logistics Forum. Could everybody please make their way back to their seats? And we will just introduce a little bit of detail around some of the next session and the live polling, which we have once again. So if you can pull your phones out one more time. And take a look at this, the QR code to the left, and look at the questions, which are going to appear on the screen. Are we going to see that? Is it just for comments? For comments, on comments, okay. Really making you work for this one. Okay. So what are perceptions of ESG or GSE, as we're going to debate this afternoon? Regulation and sustainability. What does that mean for asset values? So that's going to be just the poll. Oh, I see. Look, great. People's answers are pinging up here. Just as I said it, actually. That's good. As if by magic. So yeah, so put your ideas up here, and hopefully we'll end up with a bit of a word cloud of ideas as to what are the perceptions of ESG, and what's actually shifting. Come on, we need some more people. 3. Oh, here we go. Not important anymore. Love that. Okay. Interesting. That's good. Keep them coming in. Keep them coming in. If you haven't logged in, just log in through the QR code. It'll take you to the page, and then you can just type in what your thoughts are. Definitely a shift here, isn't there? Great, there's somebody who's voting for sake there instead of Burgundy. I think they're typing in individual words. Maybe there should be a sake factory.
I'll have more Burgundy.
Yeah, more Burgundy. More Burgundy. Sorry, I shouldn't. I think somebody's typing in individual words there for some focus sake, real sake. What do you say? Great. Good. Any more people coming through? Last push. We have some ESG champions and some ESG critics. Craig is the man. There you go. I knew somebody would end up hijacking this. There we go. What would Rich say about ESG?
Oh, gosh. I already put my comment up there.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to finish this in the next minute or so, and then I'm going to welcome our keynote speaker up to the stage, Thomas Steinmüller. Great. Okay, right, let's keep this afternoon moving on to the second half of the Logistics Forum and the keynote on what is still creating value. So welcome to the stage, a familiar face, Thomas Steinmüller from Afilog.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Hello. The question is sustainable logistics in practice. We saw this on the poll. What still creates value? Oops. Yeah. That's a little bit the picture. We have ESG in CREM, and we have a Green Deal in the European Union. We have corporate sustainability reporting directive. We have sustainable finance disclosure regulation. We have corporate sustainability due diligence directive. We have EU taxonomy. All this you know. And what's the situation in US? The Paris Agreement was left. The net zero banking alliance was left. Net zero asset management was left. And endangerment findings were written, but in case it's deregulation what we see in the US. So we have the contrast, Green Deal and deregulation. And that's very important because the US capital will increasingly ignore the regulation and the bureaucracy. The EU is already making adjustments as well. And you see also with the nuclear power, we are changing, European Union is changing the policy. Geopolitics matters more than ever. We see this, Ukraine, Israel, Venezuela, Iran, Taiwan is the next question mark. Sustainability, in a broader sense, and that's the question we have to discuss today, remains important. The ideas of ESG and of a Green Deal will remain, but less regulation is expected from our side. And economics matters and can profit from sustainability. Investments will be done with regard to returns and acceptance of tenants. Flexible in the approach, clear in the goal. GSE in one picture. Sustainability means meeting the current and future needs of the tenants, in the first place, flexibility, cheap energy, charging points. Very important topic for the tenant side, charging electric vehicles, electric trucks. But also the needs of investors, continuous income, economic feasibility, and value retention and increase. But also society, ensuring the supply of food, medicines, and production prerequisites even in times of crisis of any kind. And also women to warehouse, so also activities like this. Energy, the grid connection is one of the most important topics for the future for logistics properties. Using the possibilities of renewables and the storage of energy becomes more and more important under the point of view of sustainability. But we talked about security, storage of rainwater, civil protection, shelter, underground construction. And I just added this to the panel that we had before. In the real estate industry, you must be aware that you are not allowed to talk about defense topics. So if the question was, who has experience with this? These guys who have experience are not allowed to speak about. So we have to see this. The defense sector is quite different than the traditional real estate sector, where everybody is talking about the deals and the tenants. And last but not least, the data, to know what's happening in the property and show developments. That's also sustainability. And the last point is demography. Never forget, we have a demographic problem in Europe. That means we must be ready for automation and even for autonomization. That's all other points for sustainability in a broader sense. Sustainability is much more than energy and climate. We have to look at the costs, but also on the returns. We have shortage, energy, workforce, and we have disruptions, wars and terrorists. And we have data. And we have a deregulation of all this. We will see a deregulation in all areas, pushed by the US. What do we need? Documentation, that's okay. But increasing less required are approvals, approvals and again approvals and again approvals, and also the external transparency. I'm not willing that everybody can look in these data coming from China, for example. But there are also big opportunities. If I make the documentation, I generate data. The grid connection capacity for logistics property is very important. I mentioned this already. The grid feed-in option is not necessary because you get not the best prices for this. The energy generation itself is more important than thermal insulation. The PV on the roof is a must, but no capitalization by third parties. That means not to rent the roof to a third party for elaboration of the energy. The power storage system becomes more and more important because you don't feed in the grid, but you sell the energy yourself. And you need truck charging systems. And these are all return generation possibilities. You can sell the energy generated by the property. And a topic we are discussing not as much in Europe, but in US, we discuss this, is warehouse as a service. That means you rent not only the warehouse, but the full equipment for this. And this will not be in line with long-term leases and simple property leases. These are complex lease contracts which are in place, and this generates data. That's the point how digitization works also in the real estate sector. Because you know software as a service. Microsoft, you can't buy the software. You get the software as a service, and Microsoft generates data with this and works with this. So if you look at the logistics property, you have a roof, a facade, and some machines inside. But warehouse as a power bank, you can produce enormous amounts of energy. You can store this energy either by hydrogen, by bigger parks, and in batteries. You can also store rainwater, very important in times of inundation we have here in Europe, in the Mediterranean. If you have big rainfalls, you need storage capacities. We can combine this in the underground of logistics properties. Warehouse for robotization, that means the cooperation with robots and people, that must be prepared also inside. So you need the capacities and you need also the energy for this. Warehouse for biodiversity is also sustainability. You can work on the green of the logistics properties. And you must be prepared also with a warehouse for autonomous trucks. We have a shortage of truck drivers in Europe, and the only answer is autonomous trucks. We will see them in at least 5 years. And then you must be prepared from your property to have a connection to the automated system, loading of goods, uploading of goods in the middle of the night. So that's also a topic we have to look at. And last but not least, warehouse for defense. And you see a little bit on the picture, that's in the underground. So I don't know if you followed the news about the situation in Middle East, but the Amazon data centers, which were installed in Bahrain, were eliminated by bombs. So because they are not in the underground, they are as prominent real estates there in the place. So that's a picture of a sustainable logistics property. You have a charging system, you have solar panels on the roof, and that's the point for the discussion for the next panel. We have SLOOPy, we say sustainable logistics property, and this works for the appreciation for logistics, because we need the appreciation for logistics for installing these kinds of properties. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Very comprehensive, as always. Thank you very much, and very current as well. Thank you. Can I welcome my panelists up on stage, please, to sit in order, if they may. Diana, Vincel, Sadia, and Julie, please. Welcome to the stage. Thank you. And we're sort of opening up some very interesting views through the Slido poll as well around ESG or GSE, and views on the second part of this our session this afternoon around the infrastructure and energy elements associated with tomorrow's logistics assets. I'm going to kick off with a couple of questions, and actually the funniest one, or the most interesting one I always think, was this shift from ESG to GSE, and really what that means, because as we all came out of COVID, everybody was talking about ESG. You literally couldn't move without hearing about ESG. And now things seem to be discussing around whether ESG is just more about the hygiene of an asset, just like a certification, or but not necessarily the key driver. So I want to talk about the way that, you know, if governance is now underpinning everything instead of ESG, that does this GSE, are we entering a new GSE kind of chapter? And so I thought maybe if I start at the far end with Julie from BGIM. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm Julie Townsend. I'm the Global Co-Head of Sustainability for the real estate business of PGIM. That is a global business with 205 billion of AUM, much of which is in the United States, and the rest is scattered around what they call the regions of the globe. But I hopefully can give quite a nice global view, as well as being based in London and representing Europe and Asia Pacific. So, Dan, sustainability is absolutely now part of governance. And I think what is interesting. CBRE's European Investor Sentiment Survey, which was released recently, and it was quoted on a panel I was on this morning, said that 25% of investors were aware of and were pricing in on a brown discount, but only 10% were actually looking at a green premium. So sustainability, for me, and what I see and how we look at this at PGIM, is managing downside risk, as opposed to necessarily at this point in time, always seeing and creating alpha. So as a baseline of our governance, and this is globally, because we do see regulation, I appreciate the deregulation sentiment we've just seen in Europe and US. However, I would quote the minimum energy efficiency standard in the UK, the Energy Building Performance Directive coming into Europe, and a number of increasing building performance standards and energy ordinance in the various states and cities of the US. It does mean that we are managing transition risk as a baseline of governance around sustainability, and that's globally. And we're also managing physical climate risk as we see catastrophic weather events appear across the globe and increasing insurance premiums. So this is governance, this is management of downside risk, but we'll take every opportunity to also create alpha with that. And we do see opportunity in energy efficiency, in looking at renewables on site, creating that power, reducing that volatility in pricing, and making sure that our tenants have the ability to transition their production away from fossil fuels to electricity and the charging of their vehicles, etc. So we will take every opportunity to create alpha and think about positioning our assets for exit and for that sustainable value. Hopefully that gives a first perspective for you.
I think it's great, and thank you for introducing yourself, by the way, Julie. So I wants to go down the line and introduce everybody. So next to Julie, we have Sadia Sheikh from PowerSense and SIOR. And Sadia's come across from the US for MIPIM. Welcome. And what is your view on this new chapter for GSE or ESG?
Thank you. Well, again, Sadia Sheikh, and I'm the president of SIOR Global. And we're primarily made up of advisors across the world in 50 countries. And what we're really seeing in this conversation, and again, from the occupier's perspective, so again, representing mainly most of the companies that are occupying these spaces and investors, is the topic of sustainability has been a mature conversation. It also is continuing to be an innovative one, so that won't change. But it's also still what we're finding focused on what the occupier needs and wants, and that's all around operational flexibility and adaptability. And you know, we'll get to the conversation of energy and infrastructure, but that is still a key driver in addition to the governance around the other things that are important, but that's still top of mind and priority that we're seeing.
From an occupier perspective, if you can speak from an occupier perspective on this one, are you seeing that brokers are seeing a bit of fatigue with ESG?
I think that advisors will find fatigue in not getting deals done or not helping the clients progress what they're trying to do. So whatever is stalling that. So I don't think it's fatigue from the topic. If occupiers are saying, these are our priorities and this is what's important to us, that's what they'll lead with. So I think the fatigue might come from if the direction's not clear or other priorities constantly shift between, wait, we want the sustainability, we want to check these things, but wait, we need this faster, or we need to be in this geography, or wait, we need this infrastructure. So there's a lot of moving pieces that those percentages keep shifting. So maybe it's fatigue from that.
Fatigue, different types of fatigue. And then just moving down to Sadia's right, so to welcome Vincel, who is Head of Sustainability at Zurich. Welcome to the stage. What is your view on this umbrella idea of a shift from ESG to GSE, first of all, as we get this conversation going?
Thanks for that question. And actually, if I can do a quick quiz with the audience, if that's okay. So I wanted to ask, so a little bit of a story. So there are 3 birds sitting on the branch of a tree. One of the birds decided to fly. How many birds are left on the tree? 2? Raise your hands if you think there are 2. Okay? 3? Okay. 1? Okay, well, this is not a mathematical question. This is the thing. So remember I said one of the birds decided to fly. So it actually hasn't flown yet. It's still there. It made a decision to fly. And I think in sustainability, look, we've been talking about this for a decade, maybe more. And we've made those decisions. We've made those commitments. It had peaked, and it is where it is now. Is it going away? No, of course not. It's not going away. But it's something that we need to continue pushing forward. And I don't blame everyone in this room, including us, the sustainability professionals, because there are lots of barriers, really, in the implementation and execution of that. And I'm sure we're going to touch on it very quickly. But in general, real estate is really dependent on energy. So we are consumers of energy, and we depend a lot on the grid that's provided in those countries, in Europe, or in other parts of the world. And if you go to the energy forums or energy discussions, there are 3 topics that they always talk about. First, energy needs to be affordable. It's about affordability. That's number 1. Second, it needs to be reliable. So energy needs to be consistent, and it needs to be local. And then the third piece is, ideally, it's clean. So now that there's a race to energy, whether it's logistics, whether it's AI, it's thinking about those 3 things. How do we make energy? And probably real estate is a small contributor to that. We really need the infrastructure to do their part, to plug into that system. But how do the industry make that energy affordable, reliable, and also ideally clean to provide to not just real estate, but to the entire system?
Wonderful. And there was me thinking that the first bird would fly and then the other 2 would follow, so there would be 0 birds. Anyway, another option. Thank you, Vinsel. Diana, welcome to the stage. We heard your colleague Thomas's wonderful presentation summarizing a bit of background to the current themes impacting on logistics. You're the chief executive of Afilog, and Vincel's just been introducing that key topic of energy. Should we now be saying that energy is the new location? Is that now what you're seeing across your membership and your data?
Thank you for the question. You are talking about the shift from ESG to GSE. I really believe that the 2 can coexist. Of course, energy is really important, but we should remember that warehouse is 2 things. We are doing logistic, and we are producing energy with a warehouse. So it's a new way of seeing this kind of buildings. And warehouses are the only huge buildings who can produce massively energy. So of course, I believe energy is important, but birds are also important. Of course, sustainability, we cannot do an environmental backlash on sustainability. I think keeping biodiversity, keeping landscaping, keeping water management, as Thomas said, is really important. Of course, we are in this momentum of geopolitics, of uncertainty, and we are trying to focus on on the hard points, but I think we should keep a long-term vision and not give up on sustainability, on land, on all the topics we have been talking about in MIPIM and in other events for years. So I think the shift is here, but still let's keep involved as citizens and be really convinced that sustainability is a way for our children for tomorrow in this uncertain world. We didn't talk much in the first panel. I was surprised a little bit about carbon performance.
Yeah, it didn't come up, yeah.
And of course we are talking about energy, so energy is panels, solar panels, but there is a small problem between solar panels and carbon. So we need to really solve this performance of actual solar panels and make them more decarbonated. Once again, it's not impossible. We just need to do it. About water, of course, we can do better infrastructure to avoid floods. And maybe we can share the cost with the community, because the communities around warehouses are expecting from us actions for their inhabitants in order to accept us near their city or village. So maybe we can also share costs when we invest in water management things, for instance. I believe this is important. And also, as Thomas said, when 2 words, and this will be my final piece of answer, I think that depth is increasingly important. We always say in real estate that building underground is very expensive, so we will not do that. It's much too expensive. Let's leave that for later. But later, maybe it's now, because look, if underground offers good temperature all over the year without energy input, more or less, of course, you need to, it offers protection. So in our context, I think it's an added value. And yes, as Thomas said, iron attacked above ground logistics. Maybe if we had underground logistics, things could have been different.
We might come back to that later. It's a very dark thought, isn't it, that has to be something to take into account in this modern age. But just keeping things on the topic of the grid and connectivity to the grid, and just thinking about, Sadia, if I can come to you and think about, from an occupier perspective, are occupiers now looking at the megawatt capacity for a location being one of the key components or the key factors in signing a deal?
Well, the headline is companies are looking at megawatts over square footage, cost per square foot, or cost in that case. And that also helps them with speed to market, what infrastructure's there. It's not a new conversation, but I think it's coming up more and more with the broader things that are happening in trends and geopolitics of where do you want to be, where's the infrastructure security. They talked about regionalization or nearshoring. So I do think that that's always been a topic, but now it's priority. So again, I just want to emphasize it's not a new conversation. It's just an emphasized conversation.
And equally, are some locations that brokers are trying to lease, are those deals collapsing because there is insufficient grid?
Right.
Yeah.
Or they're picking a different geography or going to a different part of a region.
Or a different power source.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so we're seeing, again, having to navigate what's already there. And that's more of a broader topic of some really great buildings that are already there that working on redesign and getting infrastructure in those assets prior to when a company is needing them. So being proactive on the asset and ownership side to prepare these assets instead of just always building a new facility.
Julie, what's your view? What does your house say about megawatt capacity and access to the grid?
I agree. This isn't new, and it isn't new in the sense that whether you look at it as regulation, net zero commitments that have been made, we have been looking at energy efficiency at our assets for a decade. That has been a very clear way of us presenting our fiduciary responsibility and creating, improved operational costs, improved NOI. So that's just already inbuilt to our strategy. But we've also been looking, as we made those net zero commitments, to go further with our strategy and the provision of PV on a logistics asset is the absolute next natural step. So the ROI is very clear, and we are already well progressed in ensuring we are exploiting as best as possible the potential for renewable energy. Yes, logistics are brilliant, but I'd go in further and say it is not asset specific. We look for that opportunity and that feasibility because, again, it moves us one step further to a decarbonised asset and a value proposition to our tenants as well in terms of the operational costs, the reduced costs potentially of renewables that provides, and the reliability of that supply. So I think the bit that's new as we look at geopolitics and we look at soaring energy prices is that the ROI is even stronger, the business case is even stronger, the payback periods are even less. But I think what faces us now that's new is how much the business case around the electric vehicle is now reaching its tipping point of being much more sustainable over the life cycle of the vehicle than diesel or petrol. And hence we can then see that the small and medium truck wants to be electric. Our occupiers of the last mile logistics want to ensure that they've got the facilities to recharge their fleets. And that's an extra capacity.
We'll come on to trucks.
Apologies.
Later, no, that's
but I
fine.
think what I'm saying is that bit is new for us. So we have done, and we are thinking about creating stability around power through renewables because it made absolute business sense, because it's part of our fiduciary responsibility. This is now just the new layer of thinking about power in that regard.
And Witzel, from Zurich's perspective, do you agree with Julie? Are we entering an era where, of being an energy landlord as well as a logistics landlord, where you could be providing back to the grid, you could be powering your own assets? Do you see that?
I think with what Julie said, I think the strategy of landlords are very similar in terms of thinking about logistics and having solar power, or at least considering it for almost every single asset that you hold, because it just makes sense. But you have to think of it when you said, do we want to become energy landlords now? I think this is another layer. This is really a bigger step. I think when we think about real estate, which we're good at, we want to focus on this sector. If we want to, in some ways, when you are investing on the solar panels, investing on renewable energy, really it's a service to your tenants. You're not creating energy to power an entire community or an entire city. And that's a very different way. That's a different responsibility and also a different capital allocation. So I think within real estate, we think of it as a service to the tenants, especially if the tenants, one, are requiring renewable energy. Two, if it's really part of their operations, then of course it's our duty as the landlords to make sure that we accommodate the needs of the tenants and occupiers.
And Diana, I wonder if you can talk to the sort of the European government sort of view of ensuring that there is sufficient grid access and these things. I mean, how fast are governments responding to these requirements? Julie's hinted at the electric truck charging and the tolls that are being waived currently, but we will discuss that in a second. But what else are governments doing to help support the introduction and support of that for the grid?
It depends. I think that the situation is very diverse over Europe. The grid is not the same everywhere. So, for instance, in France, we have this chance to have nuclear power. We will not discuss the nuclear topic today, but we have a cheap and affordable and reasonably priced power, which is not the case in other countries. What I can see that we are, of course, undersized everywhere. We need more energy, more infrastructure energy, and everything is really slow. I've been working in administration for almost 20 years, and I know that the time of the administration is not the time of businesses. And yes, there is a gap here. I have absolutely no idea how we can accelerate it. I'm not sure we can do it, actually. I'm
so
not
there's
very
a real
optimistic. This is a real problem. But somehow warehouses are also a piece of the answer, as we can produce more power than we produce now. The problem is how to introduce the power into undersized grid. That's the topic. I think France is a little bit better equipped than average Europe. So I don't have a completely objective view of the whole Europe, but it's sure that with the electromobility, with the energy demand has increased and will continue increasing with artificial intelligence. So there is something to be done at a European level to develop a European grid and to try to enforce and to develop this grid.
Because I guess if governments have different levers to pull, whether it be access, as you said, in countries like France to certain types of energy, or investment in other countries like Germany and Belgium, I think Thomas was mentioning on the call. But I mean, they've also been pulling the lever of encouraging electric truck usage with this toll exemption across Europe, which will expire in 2031. So shall I just say it? Like, are we kicking the problem down the road here to a problem where it's inevitable? Are we looking at something inevitable to support the power grid? Vincent, could you answer that for us?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And when I looked at the IEA reports, I think it said something like in 2023 or 2024, the sale of electric truck vehicles was something around 1%, 1-2%, very low. And then there's a forecast, something along the lines of by 2030, it would be 20%. So now that's a huge jump. And as you know, when it comes to all these projections, they can be right, they can be wrong. And I think there's also, and this is the thing about sustainability, I think sustainability is only going to be successful if also the economics, we align it with the economics of things. And so I believe there is a possibility, and it's real, that you can be ahead of the game, but also you can be too early. And in that case, unfortunately, sometimes, more often than not, there is a penalty to be too early in the market. And so, but for us, it's thinking about, okay, what are those projections look like? What are we hearing from the tenants? What are we hearing from the market? How do we start aligning it, not jumping too far ahead of the market, but really, aligning that with what we see, and really it's the anticipation of what's coming.
And Julie, sorry, because Julie, you mentioned in the end of your last question about the introduction of trucks, and are you concerned about charging networks or the availability of charging points within some of your assets, or is that an additional capex that you're looking at?
Good question, and I really liked your point. You can be too early to this, and we need to make sure that we're responding to that market need. So where we're at is we're probably looking at this more country-specific and also asset-specific, and really to last-mile logistics at this point in time. And what we're trying to do is understand any risk that we sit on today with legacy assets, and or those that are in our value-add funds, which are just about to start, digging. So we are working with a business called Camion Energy, who are able to allow us to understand through a very simple search on their platform and address search what the grid capacity is at that location, but also help us understand the need of energy at that asset. So it's actually quite a high level and easy screen for us to start to think about what do we currently have. So we're not saying at this point in time we're managing it through the investment process or looking to make a price adjustment or a capex underwrite, but what we are doing is understanding that KPI and then making an informed decision off the back of that. But yes, at the moment it's last mile logistics, and it's our value add fund or Core Plus potentially that we'd be considering this, and we want to inform ourselves.
Sadia, do you want to come back on with views? I mean, is there similar? How is the US supporting electric truck charging or usage? Because I think one of the last conversations we had was about states like Texas, where I doubt electric vehicles are a high priority. But I might be wrong. What's your experience in the US on that?
Well, interestingly, as everyone knows, Texas is the big hub in the US for oil and gas, and infrastructure's there. So I think even if it's not a state that adopts EV as much, it's the center of the country, and it has it already has the bones of great infrastructure from oil and gas, which we're seeing converted in other ways. And it's, again, proximity to cross-border business with Mexico as well. So I think that still makes it a strong point. But what we're seeing our advisors, I wanted to talk about, you could come back to Europe and what you were saying about policy. But in the U.S., and back to what you're saying, the nice thing is logistics in these facilities make great hubs, right? It's there. It's just how can we utilize all of these industrial hubs already to convert to what we need in the electric space. And then in our EU leaders and advisors have shared a lot about how some of the policies don't actually, they're kind of either ahead or don't actually match what the infrastructure needs are.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay, it's about to expire. That's great. But, really pushing the policy to align with what's needed now, or even the infrastructure needs would be a lot more valuable than a toll policy.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Diana, does that reflect your thoughts on that as well, in terms of changes to networks, or what other concerns are you seeing when it comes to truck usage in Europe or further afield, if you can comment on that?
Yeah, first of all, Dan, I absolutely love this discussion with four ladies talking about trucks. I think it's not so usual, so I really enjoy it. More seriously, I think that for the moment, electromobility is very, very useful all over Europe and all over the world for urban mobility, for vans. But for trucks, it's still remain a little bit difficult, because on long haul, you can not go over 500 or 600 kilometers of autonomy. And also the trucks remain very expensive. So a normal truck, it's like more or less 100,000 euros, while an electric truck, it's much more than the double. So I don't believe that subsidizing is an answer. I think and the states have no more money, so it's more difficult to get subsidies than before. But as I don't know who said this before, but the European Union has recommended suspending the tolls for trucks, for electric trucks. For the moment, only 2 countries, Germany and Belgium, has done it. Maybe it's a way to give a little bit of air to electromobility. And maybe that things will change in the next weeks or months, because everyone here who fueled his car or her car saw the price, the new prices of diesel. So due to the Iran war, so this new situation demonstrates also that the electromobility offers some resilience. And of course, things continue to be expensive, but there can be furthermore an economic advantage. And also, my last point would be that we need to be very precise about the storage, the battery storage. In France and in other countries, the regulation about battery storage is not yet completely managed. So we are working on this with the French government nowadays, and I think it's very important for the tenant to be able to store the batteries in good conditions.
Safe and right conditions. Yeah, yeah. I want to just go back a little bit to the support that we all gave to ESG at the beginning, but would you now say that if power is such an important aspect, would you now say that an under-certified asset that had good power access, would that still be an attractive asset? Julie, can I come to you on that?
Yeah, you know what? Dan, my challenge with that is, why does it have to be one or other? Because I think that quite clearly power is part of site selection. But the green building certification isn't going away in the tool that it is, right? So it creates that transparency at the asset level, whereby you can say, okay, we did this level of sustainability. And to some aspects, you'll hopefully have a more energy efficient asset, reduced OPEX, but you are, through that transparency tool, trying to create alpha. But also, let's not forget that green building certification is also a signal to the investor, because we are continually showing the investor how well we're integrated. We use the GRES submission to do that. And the green building certification at the portfolio level accounts for 10.5 points of 100 within the GRES submission. So it's not for the asset manager to say, okay, so power's more important, let's reject putting any capital into green building certifications, because actually to the end investor, that's still got a value, that's still got a value in our GRES and portfolio disclosures. So I think it's a layering, and boy, doesn't that say that sustainability is becoming more integrated and more material to the way that we look at capital and fiduciary responsibility for real estate. So yeah, my point is, yes, it's important, but so are many other aspects of sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll all come back to the ideas on pricing when it comes to access to power, certification, and I'm intrigued by this types of power as well. I don't want to talk about micro-nuclear fusion at this panel, but it's out there. It could come down the line. It could be a way of saving stranded assets and other issues like that that are not connected to the grid. But Vincel, can I come to you to answer the same questions Julie did in terms of, would you be repricing assets that are perhaps under-certified but well-powered, or vice versa? Or do you share Julie's idea that they can live together in harmony?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to her view that they go hand in hand, really. I mean, would you acquire an asset that has no energy? Probably not, right? Because it's how are you going to run this asset without energy? And then when you look at what type of energy does it have, how reliable is that type of energy? Is it clean energy or not? It actually links back to the certifications. Again, it's one of the criteria that a lot of the certifications look at. And then there are many other aspects, as you know, with the certifications, such as the social component, the risk management, governance, and etc. So I think they go hand in hand. So, but yeah, I mean, to your question around, you know, is insufficient energy part of sustainability? Yes, you know, absolutely. That's part of it. And yeah, I can imagine it affects the pricing of the asset just because you need to operate an asset that has good energy.
Yeah. And the one thing I just wanted to check with Sadia on the occupier side from your membership is, you know, are occupiers signing any, you know, any pre-lets based on power alone? You know, is it just simply that as now, or, you know, are you seeing it's always this balance? You know, are some of these assets that perhaps have secondary classifications but great power, are you seeing them as a strategic investment? Are your members doing that?
Well, again, I think that our advisors naturally are going to follow what the occupiers' priorities are. And as they change and shift, but even with the larger occupiers or corporates, larger corporates, global corporates, most consistently, they're all looking for that sustainability component. So that's still going to be part of what they value. But again, I think it does what we have seen, and in some of the reports that we have coming out from our team, is that it is shifting by the industry. So it's hard to just say it.
Are you increasingly seeing that compromise, you know, more and more? You know, this issue for power, is it increasing?
Absolutely. I mean, again, it goes to just stability and what they're doing. So I like what you said about it doesn't have to be either or, but if you were to, what you're alluding to, Dan, is it is a priority, a high priority.
Mm-hmm. And Dan, we can't think of it in isolation. Great that you've got the power capacity on this plot of land, but you're in a flood risk area, so actually you can't utilise or get to your site at points of the year. So it's got to be part of a new material of what that is that we need to consider and factor into a sustainable asset. So yeah, nothing in isolation. It all just mounts up as far as I can see.
Well, and I want to add one more thing that's interesting that we don't talk enough about is it's still about people and workforce. Mm-hmm. It's still about who's going to, even with the autonomous, I really loved the presentation to start because it mentioned that the different facets of sustainability. We use the word broadly, but demography and just what the automation is, you still need humans, you still need people, and how are they going to get to, what's that workforce? How are you going to train them? Companies are still, again, in the site selection process looking at that. So talent and labor still. I
think it was Craig who said they were in Ohio, building a 4 million square feet shed for defense production. It needs to be. Sorry, it's my phone. Sorry. Is to think about people and labour, and that's key. So and then so as a final point, we have around 5 minutes left. Let's think about how we're going to future-proof assets in this ever-shifting market, because all of these different changes, the shocks that Craig mentioned in the first panel session. The increasing importance of power, location, different types of power that we're not talking about, Dana, but different kind of thing. All these different areas and the often compromises that we have to make. How do we future-proof assets these days? Vincent, can I come to you first on that?
Good question. I think future-proofing is really thinking about anticipating what's coming ahead from a regulatory perspective, from a risk perspective, also from a demand perspective, and balancing all three aspects together. And really, I mentioned it earlier, it's really thinking about how sustainability is aligned with economics, because it's no longer enough to just say sustainability because it's the right thing to do. It has to align with the economic incentives.
But what kind of modelling are you undertaking if you're thinking about tariff changes, supply chain breaks, the different taxation changes, different governments. But if you were planning a future logistic location, how would you, what would you be looking for?
Good question. You ask very tough questions. I think, when you look at logistics, it's number one, regardless of the sustainability aspect, it's thinking about how the demand is for logistics.
The tenants, Sadi was saying.
That's really number one. Number two, I think in Europe, it's slightly different in the US. I think in Europe, this is still strong in terms of having autonomy, and we're thinking about looking at all the different, and with logistics about onshoring in the last couple of years. So it's really the security around the supply chain and the distribution around that. I think that continues. Sustainability, hopefully it still continues. We still see that strong interest from a lot of people to continue along those lines. And so I think future-proofing the assets and future-proofing the buildings is really reading what the market is doing and what the industry is moving towards and anticipating what's coming ahead.
And Julie, you're very long-term capital. What would you say in terms of how do you future-proof something when some of these immediate shocks in the last few weeks even, can you prepare for that? Or are you now adjusting your modelling?
So my view is sustainability is not going anywhere, okay? So this is just, let's move on from that part of the conversation, because sustainability is integrated across our business, as I said, through governance to manage risk, okay? So we see real aspects of sustainability creating the brown discount, however you would like to term it. And we are underwriting CapEx for every single deal we do in UK and Europe. And that is increasingly the same in APAC as well. So this isn't going away. This is us and our fiduciary responsibility and us managing that downside risk of our assets. So we are always, from the research department of our business through the risk management structure, we are always on to what is the next macro or micro risk that we need to manage. And then when it becomes material, it gets embedded into our investment process and right across, the active asset management, and always thinking about positioning for exit and creating value around that. I don't see this being any different. So we're going to do exactly what we do well, and we're going to study and we're going to manage and we're going to understand this risk. And as it's appropriate and as it becomes important at a specific asset type or in a specific country, we will swing it into our due diligence. And, we're working, as I said earlier, we're piloting tools, we're understanding what information's out there to make sure we can get access to that information as we see it's fit, and beginning to think about that risk across our legacy assets. So, yes, it's all... But it's no different to some other very material aspects of sustainability, really. And we have a very good structure and process to manage those risks.
Yeah, I think there were a few start of 2026 articles around the fact that pretty much every investment house now just takes risk as a given now, and it's the norm, and it just needs to be baked into change. Change is never going to go away.
Totally. 2015 minimum energy efficiency standard, tertiary decree in 2019. The CREM tool came into the market and was utilised across the real estate sector, and that was 2019. This is just business as normal for us, and we have all of the risk management processes layered across our business to help us manage this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. We're on time now, I think, and I just wanted to close by asking each of you, what would be the one non-negotiable factor? If I can switch my phone off again. Sorry.
You're very popular.
Sorry. I'm sure it's on silent. Sorry, apologies. What would be the one non-negotiable item or factor or initiative with your logistics portfolio that it must have by 2030? Well, let's start with Vincel. Go on.
I would say, again, economics. Regardless of all the discussions around the tools, standards, having power, accessibility to power, is it clean, is it not clean? At the end of the day, we can only do the good if it's aligned with economics and commercial incentives.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Sadia?
I would say the must-have is the people leadership around the topic, the innovation that has to continue to keep happening, and it's leadership over cycles. Cycles are going to happen. It's who is leading, and again, I thought your bird analogy was about how one flew and the rest did too. So I'll lead that to leadership as well. That's what we need. We need the human capital and leadership.
Mm-hmm. Julie?
I love both the answers that have already been said, so can I say ditto that?
What they said.
What they said.
What they said. And Diana then, go on, any lasting, what's your view from a research and data perspective on this?
About the two important things for a logistic asset, I think that location is still very important. So energy didn't really replace the location. So I say location and energy. And I think we should remember that in Europe, I don't know in the States, but in Europe, 60% of our energy consumption comes from fossil-based energy and is imported. So I think that it's very important that every logistic asset could be self-sufficient in terms of energy, and maybe it can be more than self-sufficient and can also serve the communities around, not only the tenant, but the communities around.
Give back to the grid. Great. It's a nice positive note to finish on. Okay, great. Do we have time for any questions? Yeah, great. Okay. Let's start right in the middle here. Do you have a...
I like that story with the birds. Thank you. I like that really. So I thought to make here a small simulation about the idea of taking the decision or don't taking decision about ESG. Yesterday I heard ESG is the new currencies for real estate assets, especially in logistics. I worked for Greenwald and I'm international business consultant. We work in the PV sector and battery storage, etc. And I was making a calculation about Hillwood, JLL, Swiss Life, how much square meters they have, only on logistic, public, and how much gigawatt that can produce per hour. So I come to 2.9 gigawatt hour from the assets from JLL, Swiss Life, and Hillwood, and that is enough for 1 million households. So should we continue to stay on the tree, or should we start flying?
Is that a rhetorical question, maybe? I think that's a rhetorical question. Does anybody want to reply to that?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned around did you say stop flying? Literally the airplane flying?
No.
Okay, I got it. Yes. Yeah, we should go ahead anyway. Yeah, no, that's clear. I think also what the challenge that we've had, and this is maybe, again, sustainable as a sustainability professional, I think we've been very good at measuring a lot of the sustainability criteria. So measuring carbon, for example, was a topic that was difficult at the beginning. Now we're very good at it. But we're still not very good at is converting that into dollar amounts. How does it actually increase the valuation of my assets, or how does it actually increase the NOI of my assets? And so I see some are already getting better and better at that, but I think that's a skill set that we need to master in the coming years.
We pay for the square meters on the roof. We invest in total. We are daughter company from KKR, so money is not our problem. So if you want, we help you and solve your problems.
Yeah, happy to discuss.
Okay, over here.
Thanks. Lorna Walker from Camion Energy. A slight follow-on to your question, actually, is there something here around mindset? Because the gentleman here is absolutely right, is actually often there is a very clear, compelling commercial proposition. That economic business case, it has been made, and that's clear. And so actually it makes financial sense to put solar panels on the roof. Or you know that you need to check what the grid capacity is. Yet we see that often it's very late in a deal, just before it's about to sign, that someone suddenly thinks, oh, we should check what the grid capacity is. Or there's still reluctance to put solar panels on the roof, even though there is recent comparable transactional evidence that shows how that solar is going to be valued if they sell the building. But it hasn't happened like this for the last 20 years, and so they're still nervous to do it because it's something that's slightly new and different. So I just wonder if you've got thoughts on, like, how do we accelerate this? Actually, a lot of that commercial economic case is there. How do we accelerate, like, the mindset to just really turn this into action on the ground and get this deployed? And the bird's starting to fly.
Diana, could you take that? Or Sadia, thinking of your membership, how could we accelerate that?
I mean, I go back to the leadership. It takes the people to lead. If they see, again, from the highest levels and action, and again, I'm pretty sure if they have a strategy that they go for and it's successful, others will follow, right? So I think it just takes people stepping up in leadership. Sounds simple, but not happening as much as we would like.
Two thoughts from me. One is, once you fail on a transaction because of this, people learn very, very quickly. And secondly, I think one thing for PGIM I've noticed is we have a global data center fund, and it is question number one. What is the power and the opportunity to source that from the grid or have to generate it? And it is the first question asked. And I think now leading with that, you start to see that people are very clear in that understanding and requirements, and you start working out sources of information and insights. And I think it's only natural then that, if there is a fall, or at least that seeps over into some of the other asset classes. But yes, for data centers, it's the first question asked.
Okay, great. Well, I think we are using up a little bit of extra time. If we can all thank our fantastic panel, Julie, Sadia, Vincel, Diana, thank you very much for joining us. And that does not conclude the afternoon for the logistics session, because just up the stairs towards the back of the room, where my able assistant is waving up there, there are some drinks. So please, let's continue the discussion, fly off the branch, go up the stairs, and we'll see you for a drink for half an hour or so. Thank you very much for coming.